of months back, I got an email, and then I started seeing this. This video started trending, which was basically shared by all the adults in my life and they were sharing rave reviews about it. They're saying how this is, every young person in the world should see this, every young person should know this. This is, he has articulated beautifully well. Most of you guys would have probably seen it. The video was this one. Oh no. Yes. No. Yes. I don't know how many of you, what's wrong with young people in the world, right? A lot of you guys would have already seen it. It was an interesting video, but when I went through the whole video, I realized that any of you guys have not seen it, I don't think you have missed much. It's basically one old person telling another old person what's wrong with young people while young people are watching. So if any of you have ever been to a parents-teachers meeting, it's pretty much the same thing, where they discuss what's wrong with you while you're not allowed to talk, right? I was not surprised. I was not surprised at, the animosity towards young people. I think it's, as a young person, you're used to it. For a, education system has kind of prepared you for this quite well. But what I was really surprised by was the other side of it. There were some 61 million views of this video because I went through it, I did not hear anything new. So it kind of intrigued me from another angle, which is that where is all this animosity coming for this people, this age demography between the age of 18 and 25 or something in that. You don't find 18-year-old people or 60-year-old people sitting around and talking, why are people between the age of 35 and 45 so boring? No, there's no name. There's no, we have a name, millennials. Every generation, this age group has a name and everybody discusses it. And I was doing some research and it turns out that there's some historical precedence to it. For generations, people have been doing this. We live in a decaying age. Young people no longer respect their parents. They are rude and impatient. They frequently inhabit taverns and have no self-control. That is inscribed on a 6,000-year Egyptian tomb. I'm not sure if that's true, but it kind of fit my story, so I put it in there. Right? But I know some other stuff which is true, which is, this is what Plato has said. What is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders, they disobey their parents. The same narrative that we've been hearing for a while. Right? And something really interesting that I saw was this one. This basically says that the indecent foreign dance called the waltz was introduced. The English court on Friday night, quite insufficient to cast one's eyes on the voluptuous intertwining of the limbs and the close compression of the bodies. It's almost like what my mom spoke about twerking. So this thing has been around for a while, and it really got me thinking, where is all this animosity coming from? And there is, George Orwell has basically spoken about every generation imagines itself to be more intelligent. Basically, every generation thinks that they're better than the previous one. Possible. That's one. This thing. Next one. Another one that is that, what a lot of young people say is that how old people realize that they can never be as young and carefree as us anymore, and there's a lot of jealousy involved. Potentially, could be the case, but I believe the problem or the reality is a lot deeper and slightly different from that. If you really think about it, what is the role that young people play in society? And I believe that the role that young people play in society is the role of change agents. What do change agents do? Because young people are predisposed to question the norm. Because a lot of the norms that has been handed down to us made sense when they were made, but probably doesn't make sense anymore. And it's our responsibility as young people to some extent to ensure that we check it, we test for it. And sometimes when we test for it, it doesn't make sense anymore. So we reject it. And that's where the disrespect comes. That's where the friction comes. And this is beautiful. And I believe that, young people need to play this role. And there is another reason why young people can play this a lot better, because we are not fully entrenched into the system yet. Once you're married and have 2 children and have a bank loan to pay off, you don't want to rock the boat. Right? But as a young person, you have a lot less to lose by definition of being young and carefree and having a lot less responsibility. So it's almost our responsibility to rock the boat and see what all will fall off. And young people have been doing this phenomenally well throughout generations. So I look at all these criticisms as we have been doing our job well since Egyptian era. That's sorted, right? And if you look at it, we've been assuring change in the space of education, in the space of technology, in the space of art, in the space of music, even though not everybody enjoys it. The reality is that the change is coming and we are responsible for it and we are bringing it forward. But the one question I want to ask today here is that what is the change that young people are bringing to the social space? What is the change? We are living in an era where we have the best problems in the world. It's the best way to put it, right? The inequality in the world is increasing day by day. The environmental degradation has gone to another level. Women are no longer safe in our own cities. We face so many challenges, And what is young people's contribution towards this? And if you really think about it, the moment we say, how do young people change the world? The question, exactly, you got this right this time. This is the picture. This is the picture that comes into our minds, right? Which is that young people are activists, where you're excited about something and we're like shouting against the government or something. This youth activism is what comes to our mind to a great extent. But I feel that the role of young people as youth activists is an overly simplistic way of looking at it, simply because many of the problems that we face in our society today will not be resolved with policy change. Many of the problems that we face in our society today, the government may not be in the best position to solve those issues. Just to give you an example, the life of children in shelter homes. Children end up in shelter homes when their own parents are not able to take care of them anymore, when their families have been, when they are basically declared by the state as destitutes. The real reality difference between a child in a shelter home and us, to a great extent, is that we grew up in an environment where there were 2 caregivers for every child. But if you're living in a shelter home, for every 40 children, the government mandated number is around 3. Right? Now, it is almost not economically feasible for the government to provide 2 caregivers for every child. And it's not practical to expect salaried people to some extent to be able to genuinely care for these children. But if you really look at it from the other angle, for every orphanage that has got 200 children living in it, there are 20,000 people living around it. And if we can get just 1% of that population to genuinely care for the child, we're able to ensure that every child actually has a caregiver just like us. And that makes a huge difference. Right? This is what me and 70 of my friends did in our second year of college. And today we are taking care of 5,000 children across 23 cities with the help of 4,500 volunteers like you guys. Right? And thank you. And the change that we've been able to bring about, the impact we have is something that the government may not be able to do. And that is that, so the real important period one of the most important period in a child's life is whether he continues education after 12th standard. Because if you continue education after 12th standard, you get into a skilled job, which means your salary increases year after year. So when your cost of living increases, you're still able to pay for it. Right? Unfortunately, not more than 10% of children in shelter homes today continue education after 12th standard. Last year, Make a Difference was able to ensure 78% of all our children went into colleges that we studied in, right? From VITs to the best colleges in the country we were able to get our children into, right? This is basically just to give you a glimpse of what young people are actually able to do. This is the face of what are the changes that young people are bringing to the social space. This is what young people are capable of doing. So now, based on this, let's explore. We have around 4 rules, 4 steps for young people to change the world. Let's explore it. Step number 1, collectivize around a problem in your community. See, when we read the newspaper, when we see about the problems that is plaguing our world, it is very easy to get disillusioned. It's able to get worried about the complexity of the problem, the scale of the problem, and you really start questioning, as an average young person, what can I do? There's hardly anything that I can really do. And that's probably why when we get an opportunity to, go against the government, we go for it, because that's the only thing that we can do at this point of time to a great extent. But that's not true. At the end of the day, any problem at a global level is nothing but an abstraction. It is real at the community, at the place that you're living. Whatever problem that you are most bothered about, that problem exists in your community today. And as long as you're able to collectivize, not alone, but you and your friends are able to go out there and do real work on ground to solve it. It doesn't matter whether you care about children, you care about animals, you care about the planet. There are things that you can legitimately do in your community that literally makes a difference, right? That's step number 1, which is try solving problems in your local community. Point number 1. Number 2, get over the leadership fetish. This is a big problem. It is a big problem because I was talking to a friend of mine who is a youth leader in a village in Maharashtra, and he was really worried because he's like, I'm spending all my time trying to bring about all this change in my village. I'm not able to take care of my own family. I'm not very rich. My family is really worried that I'm really worried for my family, right? And the one question I asked him was that in your community that you're trying to support, how many hours do you put towards that, and how many hours do everybody else put towards that? We have a bad habit of leaning on our leaders a bit too much. We put them up in a pedestal, but then we expect them to do all the work. The reality is this: if everybody in the community is ready to put 2 to 4 hours on a weekly basis and support him, he doesn't need to put his 24 hours to solve it. And the reality is, even if he puts his 24 hours, he won't be able to solve it. But the 2 to 4 hours that we have, we can fundamentally change it. So point number 1, in a community development, you don't need leaders. Everybody should be leaders. There's nothing stopping. If he can do it, you can do. There's nothing stopping you to think from an angle of, why do I need somebody else to tell me what the problem is? Why do I need somebody else to tell me how to solve this problem? Or I saw a problem, why should I go and complain it to somebody else? How can I take ownership of it myself? Right? So self-organizing is a key when you need to work as a collective. And this works in Make a Difference. Make a Difference works in 23 cities. We all run by young people on ground. We don't have a single full-time staff on ground. It's all managed by volunteers who are self-organized to a great extent. We're not perfect yet, but we know that we soon will be able to give to the world a system that people can manage themselves without a leader guiding them, inspiring them, right? So number 2, we need to get over the leadership fetish. Third one, and I believe the most important one, the most toughest one actually, which is educate yourself. Unfortunately, the education system that we are in today, it is nothing but, it is state propaganda. We don't really understand what the reality is of many of the problems that we have in India today. We don't understand our leaders really well. We don't understand our culture really well. What has been taught to us is not always the truth if you start pushing it. When you're in this kind of an environment, it's very easy for young people to get distracted by the populist movements like nationalist movements, where India is the best, the whole patriotism, this thing, the whole conversations about culture. It's very easy to get young people excited in these kind of circumstances. And the only way, the idea is not to ban campus politics. The idea is for us to learn, really understand what is the context of the world that we are living in. Point number 1, why are we here? How did we end up being here? Point number 2. But point number 3, most importantly, what are the solutions to the problems? What are the solutions that other people have already figured out to the problems in my community? Because the reality is also this, right? Which is that the problems we try to deal in our community, even though it's small, they're complex. And it doesn't make sense all the time to try to solve it from scratch again. Before you enter any of these problems, you need to first study who are the other people in this space, what have they done about it, what works, what doesn't work, and you need to be standing on the shoulders of these giants while doing your work and contributing to the space than all of us starting from scratch again. And I tell you, it is our responsibility to educate ourselves, because the good example is that the reality is this, which is that when you work in the social space, if you do not educate yourself, there's a very good chance that you can actually make things worse. A good example is the Nirbhaya case. After the Nirbhaya case, the entire youth population came out, we protested, we came out on the streets, but now 4 years have passed. If you ask what was the impact that we were able to create, the number of rape cases in Delhi has only gone up 3 times again. By putting the only the real policy change that we were able to bring in was that now we can put children under the age of 18 into the jail for prolonged periods of up to like 10, 15 years. Was that really the solution that we should have pushed for? Has that solution really made a difference? Did any of the experts who knew the space back it? If they have not, why did we end up in this kind of situation? So educating yourself is critical to this particular thing. So 3 things. If we find problems in our community and start solving them collectively as a group, if we don't wait for a leader to tell us what to do, but each of us organizing ourselves. And number 3, we're able to educate ourselves and we know what is going on in our community and what the real solutions are, we will be able to solve problems on ground. But I started this talk with another conversation, which is that how do young people change the world? And how does change happen? That's where the 4th step comes in, which is solidarity. Solidarity is nothing but the realization that there are thousands of young people like me all across the globe trying to do the same thing in their community, and there's a lot to learn from them, but it's also important to support them. The moment you realize this, you don't need a national movement, you don't need an institution, you don't need a political party to make changes in the policy of the government or the world. If you really think about it, all it takes is one NGO when they feel the time is right to start asking for a change. And we can all join them in solidarity across the world. And together, suddenly we can mobilize a lot more people. Now remember, mobilization, policy change happens one big way is mobilization. Mobilization, to a great extent, is logistics. Think about it. There is a reason why amazing young people who have great credentials, great education, great values, stand up for becoming a politician, and they never get elected. They don't even get their money back. And you wonder, why is it that this is not happening while all these corrupt politicians are getting elected? The answer is that every political party has an office in every block in the country, and they have a very strong logistical system. They have an infrastructure in place. We young people are not collectivized at this point of time. And the only way we can collectivize is by actually working in our own community and then supporting other small, similar community-driven organizations across the country when the time comes. So yes, I think my end goal is pretty much this. The conversation is pretty much this. We have 168 hours every week. Can we say 4 hours is not going to be mine? Those 4 hours, I don't get to go for my friend's wedding, I don't get to play games, I don't get to do anything. Those 4 hours, I will do whatever it takes to solve the problem in my community, and I guarantee you, that's all it takes. And by the end of it, I'm not sure if your parents will be proud of you, but I'm sure that you will make a difference. Thank you.